tonight to hear you. We have some adjustments and things of that nature that we're ready to speak to. We are going to leave the bulk of the agenda to hear from you for question and answers. But before that, we do have a brief presentation. We want to allow for this small portion of the agenda up until now for the quick open house to walk around and see some of the content, because again, the presentation will be quick to leave for a lot of Q&As. I want to recognize some elected officials and their staff that are in the room. Councilor Ed Flynn, District Councilor. Ed Flynn in the room. At-large City Councilor Aaron Murphy, thank you very much for your attendance. Danny Lynch is here from Congressman Stephen Lynch's office. Danny and Congressman, thank you very much. Shane Perkins from Representative Beal's office. Shane, thank you. All the is here on behalf of State Senator Nick Collins. So thank you all. And without any further ado, like I said, we're going to leave most of it to the questions. We're also, as promised, joined by Chief of Streets Yasha Franklin Hodge, as well as the Director, Chief of Streets, and then the Director of the Boston Planning and Development Agency, and soon to be the Planning Department, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lydia Pulaski from the Mayor's Office to make a couple of comments on the Mayor's behalf, and then Pat Owie from BTD is going to lead us to a presentation, and we'll leave the bulk of the agenda for your question and answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I'm just going to project. If you can't hear me, just put up a hand. I'm going to do my best since I don't have a microphone. I'm the South Boston liaison to the Mayor's Office. Would love to connect with any and all of you after this to discuss this plan further. I have a statement that has been prepared by the Mayor that I'm going to read in regards to this plan now. Thank you for your investment and participation in matters impacting our community in South Boston. Thank you to the elected officials who are here with us this evening and who have participated and informed much of this process. The Mayor has been actively involved in listening to input from the community regarding Sbtap. To be clear, this meeting is about the planning of transportation in the neighborhood. The proposal before you is a draft, and as such, we will modify where we can as a result of community feedback. In addition, many of the items discussed tonight and already in this proposal are in response to community concerns regarding safety for all residents. One thing that we've heard loud and clear is that people have strong feelings about bike lanes, especially on East and West Broadway. We want to underscore that pedestrian and cyclist safety is paramount, and we know that Broadway needs to be made more narrow to achieve this. With that said, the Mayor is sensitive to the concerns we've heard about moving ahead too quickly with adding bike lanes. In the short term, bike lanes will be diverted to parallel side streets instead of along Broadway. A future project can look at reconstruction of the corridor and will provide opportunities for more discussion about the best way to keep everyone safe and moving. Secondly, we want to allow space for you to read, understand, and add further feedback to the draft plan. As a result, the Mayor, in association with BPDA and BTD, is extending the comment period through July 27th. Lastly, the Mayor has heard from the business community in regards to potential impacts of this plan. A listening session will be scheduled for South Boston businesses to understand constraints and analyze feedback, and I will be in touch in the near future to schedule that. Thank you, and I'll hand it over to the BPDA for their presentation. Appreciate it.
All right, Pat, you're ready to take it away. One thing I do want to clarify, though, Lydia, on the extension, you just said through the 27th, but remember our intent is to do it through the summer to allow for any potential board action wouldn't be until fall time, right? And so I just want to make that clear. I know that's what we had discussed, but in case folks don't, the comment period for Sbtap will be extended through the summer months. We don't have a board action date at the moment, and so because it's such a robust plan, we want to make sure that people have the summer to read it. This is a brief presentation, so it won't have everything in it. We're ready to answer any questions that you have, but there will be no board action through the summer, and earliest potential board action will be the fall.
I know.
And so with that, we'll get through our brief presentation and listen to and take all your questions.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.
Thank you for the introduction and radio for the statement. I have a brief presentation, just like 19 slides. It's more contextual. It's the meat, really the meat of the plan is in the boards and in the plan itself. And I encourage everybody who hasn't already gone through it or commented online or been to any of our Zoom meetings or other engagements to to kind of dive into the details and kind of pull out whatever might be of issue for you or concern for you and where you are in South Boston. So again, nothing kind of earth-shattering in the presentation necessarily. It's more contextual, and then we want to hear from everyone tonight. Just the agenda again, study area, timeline, kind of our goals of this plan and this project, a little bit about implementation, and then I want to kind of go over a few slides from kind of post April 4th meeting that we had where, to put it bluntly, we got an earful at the meeting on the 4th, and as you've heard, we made some adjustments, and it's good. It's the push and pull of government, right? It's not perfect, but usually we find some common ground in the end. And then Q&A, of course. Am I blocking this by standing here? I don't know. Mark, can you do the advance that?
Sorry, I should have jumped in.
And I apologize, a little blurry. There was a screen. The screen came down today, of course, right? But the study area, shaded in, you can see this is kind of the core of residential South Boston. And reason being, we've done, obviously, planning around the South Boston waterfront as the growth zone, right? And along the perimeter on Dorchester Avenue, planned on Ave, we have between Andrew and Broadway, kind of that industrial area transitioning and changing into more of a mixed use for that corridor. And then, the Mary Ellen McCormick development kind of on that end, right? So, it's kind of like, now we're at the hole in the donut, but no less important than all the other planning that's gone on. So I think it was time to have this kind of deep dive into transportation for the neighborhood. And actually, a lot of credit goes to actually Senator Collins for a few years ago bringing this up and saying we really need to focus on the neighborhood. Let's get some funding. Let's do this plan. And here we are. Next slide. Again, with the timeline, a little difficult to see. It was on some of the boards, and I think you might have some copies, but we've been at this for about 2 years. And standard procedure on any of these plans, it's usually the same kind of like pattern. You have existing conditions, right? The first thing, you kick it off, existing conditions. Like what's going on out here? What are the issues? Next step is, okay, what are the goals, issues and opportunities and goals and priorities that we take, knowing and understanding the existing conditions. Is it speeding? Is it unsafe crosswalks? Things like that, right? Go back just one more round, back to the timeline. And then following that are the recommendations, and that's where we're at now. Digesting all of that, existing conditions, the goals and priorities, engagement, right? What bubbles up, and then we get to the recommendations. And of course, best practices, right? There's transportation's best practices, just like any other trade, and there's methodology behind it all. So next, Mark. I talked a little bit about the goals and priorities. These are also kind of like, this is the lens, if you may have seen this on the board or come across it. This is the lens that we look through everything as transportation professionals. And you can see the first thing on the top left, if you're reading left to right, safety for all modes. We have to be guided by that. That is really first and foremost. But other aspects to, access to train. Is everyone within a certain walking distance of a transit line? Is everyone in a walking distance to a bike share station. Some of the things that came out of our citywide plan Go Boston 2030. So access to transportation itself as well. And then, all modes. We're thinking about motorists. We're thinking about drivers, pedestrians, cyclists, transit riders, the whole gamut. Next slide. A little bit about, again, the timelines and implementation. This is where it gets a little tricky because we have this plan, right? We'll go through the comment period. It gets adopted right at some point, right? After maybe some tweaks and some changes. And then we have the plan. What do we do with the plan? Now it's about implementation, right? And then there's some tough choices about, what we can do in acquiring funding, resources, and there's a few mechanisms for this. There's, kind of our, state of good repair and our operating budget that we have. That's one way of kind of implementing some of the more tactical improvements that we can make, you might have seen out here. Okay. Just dim it so we can see the slides a little bit. So, so mechanisms for implementation, we have our operating budget for more of the near term. There's a lot of this development, right? I've been with the city for a few decades now, and one of the roles that I have is working with developers on mitigation. And, when we're at the table, it's about, what improvements can we make to the infrastructure around these new buildings and these new places. And, are there ways that we can enhance the safety and enhance the transportation experience in our agreements with developers? So developer mitigation is another resource, another avenue to acquiring funds for implementing the recommendations of the plan. And then, of course, there's just our capital budget, right? And also just kind of whispered in my ear a little bit about budget back and forth and wrangling kind of budgets and priorities and things like that. And we have that within our own streets cabinet, and a lot of it is data driven, and how we prioritize. And it will be the same with this project in terms of implementation, right? If we really need to get something done because it's a priority, it is an unsafe condition, and that's what people are telling us in the neighborhood, that's what we're hearing, and there are like crashes to support interventions, then that's the criteria that we use to guide the funding and to implement recommendations from the plan. Mark? Just again, a little bit of the context in this near-term, long-term. Near-term things like you might have seen, like on Farragut Road, where we built the median. We daylit the corners. Daylighting is when you kind of you restrict each corner of the intersection so that there's not a vehicle there that can create blind spots. And we did have someone that was struck there a few years ago. Thankfully, it wasn't severe, and she's okay, but there was a crash. And what we did was, it was just, it was a low cost, and it was something that we were able to turn around quick. But the daylighting, it kind of prevents people from illegally parking in those corners. And it creates visibility for the motorist, visibility for the pedestrian, and it works kind of vice versa so that each can see each other. Long-term projects, right, and which there are many in this plan, right? That requires design and construction funding. So again, obviously that's a longer term profile because it's costly. Roadway construction is costly and time consuming when you get into design. But that's the process. The plan, the concepts, design, and then ultimately construction. Mark? Just a little bit more on the timeline. You can see when I talked about the inventory and kind of taking stock when we kicked off in 22 and then into 23. We had a few different engagements before we got into some of the bigger Zoom meetings. We did focus groups. There was, I'm not a drinker, but there was a pint with a planner. I don't know if anyone showed up at that in this audience, but that was kind of something different, a little bit innovative, just to bring people to the table and get their take on what's happening in the neighborhood in terms of transportation. We did pop-up events, and then we had, the Zoom meetings to capture as many of the voices as we possibly could kind of the last couple of years. And now we're at the kind of the last stage of the draft recommendations. Mark? The survey, we did a survey. This is another tool where we were able to kind of gather perspective, answer questions, provide a question, posing to people what their priorities might be. And, we divvied it up into different kind of modes that people have as their primary mode. We had people who are primarily transit riders, people who are primarily walk, people who primarily bike, or people who primarily drive. Across the board, and, the common denominator was people saying that they were concerned about speeding and aggressive drivers. Across the board. So what does that tell you? It tells you that safety is paramount, kind of like calming things down, using the tools that we have, right, to make things safer. But again, that was a common denominator, speeding and aggressive driving. And, we had 700 respondents, and the data, we have raw data, but 90% of those people, not 100%, but 90% were from the study area, that lived in the study area. So it was a good capture of the actual residents. And so again, that common denominator across all modes, that leads us to focus on that importance about slowing vehicles down and creating a safer environment for people to cross. So what we did is, you may have noticed, I talked about near-term implementation and near-term action items. We did roll out in 2 different zones, speed humps on the residential side streets, and I think that does a lot more than maybe signage or pavement markings, things like that. Just the built environment, the physical environment that could really make a difference. Mark? So again, safety and pedestrian crossings, right? This is just kind of a general image illustration of a 4-lane cross-section, kind of like you might find on Broadway or on Summer Street north of Broadway. And when you have a 4-lane crossing in the parking lane, that's quite a distance for someone to cross, especially a senior or someone with disabilities, right? So are there tools that we could use to shorten that distance without necessarily impacting the existing uses, right? There are ways where you can extend the curb out, create a little daylighting. You can use median islands, right? And I have a few images to follow this to give an example of some of those ideas. But making pedestrians crossing safer is really one of the primary goals of this plan. Next, Mark. Okay, right-sizing streets. Now, okay, some people are probably like, oh, here we go. It's all the road diets, and you're going to take all the lanes away. It's going to be a nightmare. That's not necessarily true. It may be in some cases, but hear me out on this. Right-sizing the streets. Think about it. On Broadway today, on West Broadway, between Perkins Square and say 8th Street. It's 2 lanes in each direction, 2 parking lanes. But each of those lanes they're at least 17 feet wide. 1 lane in each direction, but each of them 17 feet. The standard travel lane really, a minimum is 10 feet. 10 and a half or 11 if you have buses, right? So if you're running buses, so 11. So that's 6 feet, that's 12 feet. That's 12 feet that we could use. Think about what we could do with the 12 feet. We could give it to the sidewalks, right? You could just, extend the curb to make the crossings not shorter. But, however, listen, we get the idea of deliveries, right? Servicing the businesses, so we can't just put curb out there and then walk away and that's it. We have to accommodate for large vehicles, for trucks making deliveries, all that. But the point I was just trying to make is 17-foot lanes is really excessive. And with 17-foot lanes, that's the speeding that you get to. And again, the common denominator I talked about, right? Speeding and aggressive driving. Even the driver said speeding and aggressive driving, so they come, right? So a 17-foot lane, just for example, I think we can do better, even if it's 12, right? You get 5 feet on each side, right? You could, you could create some additional sidewalk space and space for other users. Mark? So, again, near-term, long-term, tactical, reconstruction, right? The longer-term, design, more funding, those need a process. So everything that's in this plan, right, short of some some daylighting, some medians that we might put out with flex posts, right, some of those tactical things. Aside from that, if we're gonna do a plan and a design for reconstructing any of these roadways, Farragut Road, Broadway, L Street, right, all of the corridors that, might have this, 4-lane cross-section, we're gonna have to go through a process. In rooms like this, on calls, other engagement scenarios, one-on-ones with the stakeholders, with the businesses, everybody. All the stakeholders at the table. So it's a plan. We're not going out and building everything tomorrow, although we want to, in the interim, try to, create safer environments and invest. But any of the plans that we have for any of these streets, they're not going to be built next week or the week after or even next month or necessarily within this calendar year in terms of a design and a reconstruction. There'll have to be a process just like this, hearing people out, getting perspectives from all the different users, right, so that we come up with the right design and the right reconstructed roadway. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there just so that in terms of process, everyone, I think we can kind of take a step back and say, okay, I might not agree with everything that's recommended, but there's going to be another opportunity as we move forward to try to go from design into construction. Mark? Some of the short-term examples I talked about, on Farragut and on East Broadway and other places, even outside here where we kind of extended the little nose, right, where the intersection comes to kind of claim that space a little bit. You can do a lot with, thermoplastic, with the bollards, with the flex posts, with some of these, hardened medians. You create visibility that I talked about, just to cut down on the risk that you have of a pedestrian being struck by a vehicle. That's what we want to avoid at all costs. Mark? Again, center lines like this, you can kind of create a corridor for a turn, just so that you don't have a sweeping turn or a high-speed turn. Have a corridor for the turning lane built out in these removable, flexible bollards that, these are evolving as well, too. The materials, the technology, the cost effectiveness. So these are some of just the near-term tools that we could use. Mark, next slide. This is up by Eileen's house, a median that we created, just to at least have more visibility and a refuge, if you will, and then to kind of narrow that approach and also to create visibility at the corner. You can see you can't park on that corner. Obviously, parking's in Paramount in South Boston, we get that. But right on the corner, right, you shouldn't be, it's from 20 feet from a crosswalk is, it's unwritten, or it is written, it's in the rule book. But sometimes it's not abided by. So this kind of just keeps the vehicle from parking all the way up on the crosswalk that would prevent someone from seeing the pedestrian. Next slide. Pedestrian warning signs, standard, kind of, we've added LEDs just for a little bit more visibility. The effectiveness probably is debatable, but at least it's something to draw attention to someone that maybe they're distracted, a driver, they're on their phone or whatever. The blinking light to draw attention, like, whoa, I'm approaching a crosswalk. Mark. Here's another, just kind of like an innovation that we came up with to use some of that extra space. And it would be strategic and tactical, right? So if we were on Broadway, West Broadway, like I talked about with these wider lanes, right? And if this was gonna cause a problem with, you know, in front of someone's business or whatever, we wouldn't do it. We'd shift it and find the right place for it. But you could have the two standard size lanes, keep the parking lanes, and maybe they're loading zones. We have a plan to, manage the curbside better, right? Recommendations to manage the curbside better. Maybe we need more loading zones. But you keep the parking, you keep the one lane in each direction, so you're not taking the travel lane away. Still the same capacity for all the vehicles. But in the middle, you could use the median, and use that extra space, that 10, 12 feet, 14 feet maybe, in the median. And I know the chief saw the planter, and he almost went crazy, like, how's that gonna work? But this is a conceptual, and maybe it's not a planter, it's something else that we could put in the median, but you can have these as a strategic block to just slow people down, right? And then right size that lane so that you're just not stepping on the gas in this wide lane. Go ahead, Mark, next slide. This is just another technique that is becoming more common in transportation, arenas. It's chicaning, and you can see you just put a little bit of a bend in the road or a curve in the road, and you don't want it to be too abrupt where people are gonna like slam into something. It's more gradual, but you can stagger it, and the chicane just, instead of just a straightaway where people might accelerate too much, a little bit of a curvature in the road. And again, you wouldn't be using any of the parking, you'd just be bumping out, right, with barrier, Jersey barrier, and create some space, and maybe you can use that space for something else. Maybe it's dining. Some people are into that if there's enough space. Not everybody's keen on outdoor dining, but you can do something like this tactically. You keep all the parking, you keep the travel lane, you just create that curvature in the road to slow people down. Mark, I think that might be it. Okay, hope I got through that. Not going too long of a time, but thanks everyone for attention. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Pat. Can we just hit the lights? And first and foremost, I want to give our elected officials in the room an opportunity to speak. I think Councilor Ed Flynn wants to say a few words. I want to say
that night that a car just missed them by a foot. They don't stop. Yep. I know. So here's my point. We need more police enforcement in South Boston. I know, hold on, Chico, I know. This community is not part of the defund the police movement. We've advocated for the police during difficult times, but we really need their help. We need their help on basic city services as well. I don't think South Boston gets their fair share of basic city services. Let me be brief, go right to the point. The plan, I didn't like the plan. I still don't like the plan for many reasons. One of the reasons is the communication with the community was lousy. It was lousy. And I don't like to say that about city employees, but I have to be honest. The city officials, the planning and transportation department wanted to push this plan through at the last minute. I've been fighting with them for years. Just today, I got a call from a neighbor down towards P Street and Broadway. Blue bike stations. They're measuring for blue bike stations in and around that area. But I guess my point is, the interaction with the residents has to be the #1 priority. You can't unilaterally do something and expect the residents to like it. I know all about the situation down near the skating rink. My friend Katie, I won't say her last name, but Katie was hit with her little baby, and we worked to address that issue. But no one has to tell anyone here in this community about pedestrian safety. We need more speed humps. We need raised crosswalks. I've been fighting with the city administration for years to get speed humps. We finally did it, but we don't have enough. We need more in South Boston. We need more enforcement from the police. I actually think we should lower the speed limit. People disagree with me, but the key part of it is enforcement of the current speeding regulation. I think this plan is hurtful also to the small businesses in South Boston. I know how important, I know how important small businesses are. Our family members work there. We go to some of these locations. The workers do a terrific job. The small businesses work hard. My friend Olga on West Broadway, I think Olga's here, right? And Olga, you're also hopefully going to start, you're going to have a listening session as well on West Broadway for businesses. We're going to plan that. I know that was mentioned at the beginning. But businesses should be part of the solution. They're not the problem. They should be part of the solution. Rob is not part of the problem. Rob should be included, or Dave Casper, or Billy Spencer, or all of these people. But what you can't do is just come into South Boston and dictate to residents on what you're going to do. That's not going to work. I think we have a wonderful BPDA director, Arthur Jameson. But Arthur, you're getting bad advice from a lot of planners on transportation, and it's hurting the credibility of the planning department. We support small businesses. They play a critical role in this community. It's about working together. It's about listening to each other. It's about respecting each other. And during this process, that didn't happen. Because this plan wanted to get pushed through at the last minute by the transportation department. And that's troubling to me, because if we weren't on top of them, they would have done that. So what I'm asking is to work with the community, respect the community, listen to our recommendations, but not only listen to our recommendations, implement them as well. Anyone can make a plan from their home or from City Hall, but you have credibility when you live in the neighborhood and you understand the neighborhood, you understand the concerns and the traffic and the people, and what areas are difficult to cross. You people live it. Phyllis, you know, Phyllis could be the planner for it. She's lived here her entire life. Born and raised. But should the voices of the elderly and persons with disability, should they be included too? I don't think they were heard during this process. When we're having pop-up meetings near Broadway Station, I don't think that's inclusive to the elderly. I don't think it's inclusive to young families or persons with disabilities. So I'm going to ask the planners, again, to go back, to make changes, to listen to the residents tonight, listen to their recommendations, and to consider them, and then come back to the community again. As I mentioned, this isn't just my opinion. I know Congressman Lynch also feels very strongly about pedestrian safety, Senator Collins, Representative Beal, Erin Murphy. It's about working together and respecting each other. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councilor Flynn. Any other elected officials? Councilor Murphy, do you want to, is Councilor Murphy still there? Otherwise, I know Shane wanted to say a few words on Rep. Beal's behalf, please.
Not elected, so I'll be in front of the room.
All right.
My voice is loud enough. Rep. Beal is stuck in session debating a pretty big economic bill, and he'll probably be there late tonight, but he wanted me to share, and we'll second what Councilor Flynn had to say, that he was very disappointed that the first proposals did not include any feedback from residents, or especially small business owners that rely on Broadway for their livelihood. Recommendations were put together without their input. The rep hopes that the BPDA will correct that course and listen to residents and business owners who know these streets like the back of their hands. Transportation planners would benefit from listening to them and incorporating them into their plans, but I will make sure to brief the rep on some of these changes.
Thank you very much, Dave. All right, we'll open up for questions. I just do want to say we certainly do commit to the requisite amount of engagement. All the time we do things like this, it's never enough. You know, we commit, we've heard that it hasn't been enough. That's why we decided, of course, to said we're going to extend this past the summer. We do commit to doing a lot of those things that you recommended, or all of those things, I should say, Councilor, meeting with the small businesses, et cetera. So we fall in that sort appropriately, and we want to continue to work, and we've extended the comment period to do exactly that. But with that, we'll open it up for questions. Myself, Pat, the two chiefs will answer them the best we can. And just another reminder, you know, it's a big, voluminous document. Take some time to read it over the summer. We purposely, you know, left that pretty short, but and I don't want to be accused of leaving things out. We understand there's a lot of, you know, slides, you know, Farragut Road, et cetera, High Street. Pay close attention to the recommendations we're making there as you look through it over the summer. But with that, please raise your hand and we'll call on people individually. Phyllis, and I think I agree with giving you a job. You could be my boss. That would be pretty apropos, I think. Go ahead.
My name is Phyllis Corbett. I've lived here my whole life, and I've seen quite a few changes. Down on Columbia Road, they did put the markings. There's a little sign that comes under a tree. They should make those strips a little further back, so that when you're on Columbia Road, they know which way they're going. Out here on Broadway, we put the bus lane. That's not being enforced. There's more cars in it than buses. And when you try to make a turn to get into Marine Industrial Park or any place else along the way, you can't because there's more cars than buses. It's not being enforced. I Street and N Street, no turning between the hours of 6 and 9. That ain't being enforced. The cars are still turning between 6 and 9. Isn't anything that's being done being enforced?
Thank you, Phyllis.
I mean, come on, you make these changes, but nothing's being done about them.
Fair point. I don't know if that's a question, but more of a comment, right? It's just like the councilor said. Exactly. Fair enough. Enforcement needs to be part of this in order to make it, for it to make a difference. Yes, ma'am?
I've been a business owner for 40 years over here, so I've seen some good changes and some bad changes. I had cut word that the mayor wants to put in meters in front of our businesses.
Meters in front of businesses, she said.
On West Broadway and East
On West Broadway and East Broadway.
And by, first of all, meters kill small businesses. And, let me finish. Kill small businesses terribly. And not only, and I heard she wants to raise our commercial tax. I don't know if everyone knows here, but it's 25.7 on commercial tax. It will kill small businesses. And the second thing is, I feel a lot of time because the people didn't go back to the seaport, that we're now getting the exorbitant costs because people won't go back into work. So they're kind of picking on this area. I think this area has been so overbuilt by developers. And I can't even get a sticker because I don't reside there. I've lived in Quincy for 38 years. And I can't even get it. But I pay off the huge taxes here. I have to pay huge taxes here. And I can't get a sticker. And I run in between the morning and the night and then run again out in and out of my business to get a spot. And I feel like if you have a tenant, they get a sticker. And they can come from New Hampshire, New York. And I've been born in Boston my whole life. And what I'm really saying is, you know, I think when people say what you should do to a neighborhood, they should live in the neighborhood. And if they don't live in the neighborhood, they shouldn't have any say in what really goes on because the neighborhood is the one that all the businesses know one another.
Fair enough. As we showed on that slide, right, we did other forms of outreach. Admittedly, it's not enough. We need to do more, but the vast majority of the respondents, 90+%, through all the mediums, were residents of South Boston through this process. But to your point, and obviously chiefs and others, you know, if I misspeak, jump in, but on your point around Broadway and the meters, there was There are recommendations in this transportation action plan that we're seeking feedback on. And so to your comment around the mayor wants meters, you shouldn't read that into the plan. The plan makes various proposals to say, how do we try to deal with the congestion, et cetera, that we have now. I think, if anyone from transportation wants to speak to that, in some areas we see the implementation of meters actually just causes quicker turnover, and it's actually encouraging for businesses, but that's something we're throwing out as a possibility, and we want to hear it. Sounds like you would be against it.
I don't think South Boston should be told what to do.
Oh, no, agreed.
We saw in the North End what happened, which is, my family are in the restaurant business. It's a disgrace over there is what's happened.
Well, let's stay
And they're trying to
focused
do
on this one.
the same thing here.
All right, so let's just say we'll hear-
We're told what to do.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you.
When was the feedback on the 700 people that live in the area?
Meaning, when was that survey done?
None of us, has anyone?
Good evening, China EFY. Please come sign out in the main office. The building will be closing in a couple of minutes. Thank you.
Has anyone in this room? Anyone in this room? No. Just ran on that
All right, so
survey.
I can answer that. Oh, thanks, we done a few hands. Okay.
And how did that, how come we didn't?
Sure, the question is, how was the survey implemented? How was the survey done? It was
Small businesses get that.
So what we did in the small businesses, we flyed in some of the locations, like dropped them off in the front of businesses. We emailed it out. So did we, falling on that sword, did we go around individually? No. Should we have? Yes. Will we? Yes. Right? But, so fair enough. What we did is strategic businesses, a lot of people come in, we'll leave some on the desk. We partnered with some of the senior programs on seniors particularly. We had focus groups. So we did a focus group with families who run small children. We did a focus group. Again, these weren't huge, but they averaged like a dozen to 15 people. We got a lot of information there. And then we emailed it out too, which was available electronically. I think about half were done electronically, half were done paper. And I would say most of the paper were done by seniors through programs like the Ollie. Carol helped us out a lot. Thank you very much, Carol Sullivan, who works at the Ollie. But some of the senior activities down at the Condon, we utilize that. Understanding we've not touched every senior in the neighborhood, but we thought we had a pretty good snapshot.
It's like 10 people that raised their hand out of the whole gym.
Yep, so I would say this. We can acknowledge that we need to do better there. The respondents, and I'm not saying that you have to answer this now, but I would encourage you to take a look at that, like the responses that we got. Were they accurate in your opinion? Like for instance, as Pat mentioned, the most common answer we got, no matter what focus group that was, around concerns, if the question is what is your biggest traffic-related concern in the neighborhood, it was traffic calming and pedestrian safety. They wanted to calm traffic and improve pedestrian safety across the board. And so I think the question I'd ask you all to think about is that what is most important to you? And if not, what is? And I'm not,
Just trying to get home.
yes, try and get fair enough.
I don't need another bus lane.
Yep.
I really don't.
Yep.
MBTA is a disgrace. You can't get on the MBTA. You just want to get home.
Yep.
That's all.
Just wanted to mention one point about living in South Boston and working on the plan. For the record, our project lead, Sam, she just gave birth to a baby boy yesterday. She lives in South Boston, so she's a South Boston resident. Now she has a new South Boston resident born right here, so just for the record.
That's okay, yeah.
She lives and kind of has that experience of being from here. It might not be her whole life, but she is a South
All the people
Yes.
that have been in 5 or 6 years, like
You know, something about, that was mentioned in the action plan that keeps going around in my head. In the plan, it basically states that, the bike lanes, you're putting them in order to include all modes of transportation and to make it safe. So, why am I paying an excise tax to put my car on a street in this city when that street is being condensed in size to allow other modes of transportation that don't have to be insured, don't have to abide by any kind of safety regulations, all right? And you might have that you need to oversee. And also, is any part of this coming out of the Green Deal? Is anybody getting any money from the Green Deal by implementing all of this? Because it doesn't make any sense. None of this makes any sense. You are purposely causing congestion in the city.
Yes.
And the way how you're going to try to solve it is to cause more congestion and put in bike lanes, all right? You do not stop the kitchen sink
The
from
building is
overflowing
closing,
by
you are still
bailing
in
it
the
out
building,
into
kind of
the
EFY
window.
staff,
You
please
stop
come
the
down
flood by
and exit
turning
by the
off
main
the
office.
faucet.
Thank you.
So you need to figure out a way to somehow mitigate traffic coming through South Boston from other sections, coming from the North Shore, the South Shore, going home. This was something that was supposed to have been done before and never was. And one more thing, the mention about how the corners are being blocked by those plastic posts. The reason why that had to be done was after 2 people were killed because the city was negligent in implementing a traffic plan. It took 5 years from the time a gentleman was killed until that little boy was killed on L Street in order for the city to come up with a plan that they had promised 5 years prior to that little boy being killed. So once again, you come up with all these great ideas, but nothing's implemented, and you have no way of controlling it. So this plan makes no sense whatsoever.
Thank you. You feel like some of the other road users maybe should have to chip in as well. I can't say that I can answer that, but just on the fatalities and people getting hit, you know, the hard-hit intersections, yes, I mean, we're trying to prevent future ones of those. Yes, I'll also admit that at times we're reactive, but some of the recommendations we're making on the plan is to try to prevent those in the future.
You're not going to slow scooters down, you're not going to slow any of that other,
Well, that comes down to enforcement, and I completely agree, as the council said, as many people have said, and I think we're here to acknowledge, and if anyone wants to reassure, but Chief of Streets, Yasha Franklin Hodge was out in the newspaper recently, speaking right towards the need for further enforcement on those Uber Eats, on those, so I'm not saying that it's just, you know, folks are going to start obeying the law because we've acknowledged it, but we're acknowledging it's a problem. We're working with the police department and others on enforcement. You know, that's not the idea of these other modes of transportation. To be clear, it isn't so Uber Eats guy can fly up there, go in the wrong direction, almost knock people over. Completely agree. That we need to do something about that, but I think we can also try to address that and think about
why
other
not have a
safety.
safety plan first before you start implementing some of this stuff? Nobody can sit there and say, here's the problem, fix the problem. It's like, there's a problem, so we'll ignore it. And that's what you do. When there's a problem, you ignore it.
Fair enough. Next question. Yes, sir.
All due respect to the leaders that are here, to this young lady's point, the bicycle is, raise your hand if you have to pay liability, insurance, registration. Everybody? I would respectfully ask.
The bikers have a union.
I would respect the leadership to start this off, that the city council go to the state house, whatever, is to implement any two-wheel vehicle that has a motor. A little make-believe
Some of the
motorcycles.
batteries, those things,
Have to be registered, have to have liability. I had a two-wheeler run into the side of my vehicle. I have plenty of coverage to protect that person and myself. They have nothing. It cost me almost $1,000 to get my car repaired.
Now that's
And
come up.
nothing on the other. So I would just suggest that that be one of the things that would probably slow down a lot of the bicycles. We wouldn't have as many bicycle riders, little scooter riders, if they had to pay a couple of $1,000s a year like we have.
So that's come up a couple of times now. Chief, is there anything we can, obviously on bicycles I think we'd probably disagree, but on motorized, like mopeds and things like that are supposed to have insurance now, right? Is there any discussion on, because that does come up in a lot of discussions, what's the thought process on these various motorized devices that are going upwards of 25, 30 miles an hour? I don't know, is there any like current conversation that we could share?
Yes, this is a very active conversation. Hi everybody, Yash Franklin Hodge, Chief of Streets of the City. Thank you. So as Mark mentioned, the issue that we have seen with, in particular, delivery riders driving what look like scooters or mopeds, but most of them are legally classified as motorcycles, it's become an enormous safety problem in the city. We see people going too fast, going the wrong way, not yielding to pedestrians, running through red lights. This is an issue that we are trying to address in a couple of different ways. We are trying to put a little bit of accountability on the companies that are employing folks and giving them every incentive to go as fast as they can and no incentive to be safe. We are also putting accountability on the people doing this work. The Boston Police Department has started to do more aggressive enforcement about traffic safety violations. We're also working at the state level. I had a conversation today with the Secretary of Transportation that, among other things, talked about this. We're talking with the Registrar of Motor Vehicles. Many of these motorcycles are unregistered, which is illegal, and we are trying to figure out how the state can take a bigger role in making sure that vehicles aren't being sold that are unregistered so that we have the ability to do the kind of enforcement that we need to do.
Hey, hold on, we just have one question at a time, please. Chief happens any questions, answer questions, there's 20 people, so we're not just finish up your other questions, sir, and then we'll call it in. Yeah.
In my town, I don't care where every other town is going. In my town, I would like to implement more one-ways, do the math. For the little boy that got killed, for my friend that got killed down at the end of Bell Street, if there are more one-ways, do the math, there's less chances of someone getting hit when we only have two cars going into it. I would love to see that. Just like
Thank you for that suggestion.
Suggested.
Yep.
Everything has compromise, folks. If we have a committee that can sit down with these people, and whatever the issue is, if we compromise, we'll all be happy with it. We're not going to get everything. This thing says that it's going to be implemented by November.
No, so
Am I reading that?
what we're saying is we are not going to pursue any board action approval of this plan until the fall. It's undetermined at this point. Without BSing you and saying that we're just going to put this on the shelf and determine, I'm not saying that, but there's at least several months of comments. Earliest we move is in the fall.
I mean, it sounded like that's what happened in West Roxbury. It just got jammed down there. And there are a lot of people that I know that are unhappy with it. I'm not saying that this is bad.
We're talking about a different process here. This is the Southern Transportation Action Plan, so it's a different process, but I appreciate your comment on the one-ways. We've had changes onto one-ways in South Boston. There was concern about a lot of them. I don't know about how you feel. I think it's worked out pretty well, but, you know, so thank you for that suggestion. Yes, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep an order in my head here, but I apologize, I'm probably going to screw it up. Yes?
Thank you. One way is a good idea. I know we did during the snowstorms of 2015 with east and west streets. There are a lot of things in the plan that I think do a lot to improve pedestrian safety. And in previous meetings I've been to, I know that people have complained about speeds and safety when walking. One of those is the teeing off of intersections. There's about a dozen of them throughout the plan that you have an intersection where it's like a straight road like this, and then the one that comes in at an angle. So you aren't able to clearly see and make the turn safely. Examples include Columbia with Marine, 8th and 7th. People just fly right through those without actually looking. And also Emerson with Broadway, same idea. You're coming with Broadway speeds down onto narrow Emerson when people are making a crossing there and there's parking. So the teeing off of intersections I think is a great idea to improve pedestrian safety. The other one is also the right sizing. So East Broadway, like it's only 2 lanes between L and Perkins Square, Dorchester Street. And the rest of it is 1 lane. So why is there like a few blocks where it's 2 when the rest of it is 1? What you end up with is the double threat where people are trying to cross Broadway. They get one car to stop, they don't get the other one to stop, and it comes flying from behind them. So right now, you have to cross Broadway, you're crossing 4 lanes of traffic, and you have to get them all to stop at one time. If we narrow that to be like the rest of Broadway, so it's 1 lane in either direction, and maybe even a pedestrian refuge island in the middle, you're only crossing 1 lane of traffic at a time, not 4. You're able to focus on that 1 lane on this way, and then the 1 lane that way. It's much safer. East Broadway has had 2 people die since 2018 on it. Like, there needs to be a focus on that. Current problem is that, yeah, when somebody is hit or dies on the streets of South Boston, we put daylighting in that one intersection or the intersection, like the next intersection down. But we need a more comprehensive like daylighting across all of our intersections, because as it is, when people pull up to a 4-way stop, they do not stop before the crosswalk. They stop halfway through it, almost into the intersection. So there needs to be that visibility, and the other thing that would actually have people stopping at those crosswalks is the raised crossings. Raised crossings are there 24/7, like they don't go away, unlike police enforcement, which is needed for a number of things, but you can't have somebody there 24/7 the way that infrastructure is there constantly, slowing people down and saving lives.
Thank you. All right, yes, ma'am, right up front.
I know Lydia had touched base on that East and West Broadway, the bike lanes were gonna be paused,
Yeah.
but the other 7 streets, so like Farragut, all those neighboring, are those also paused for bike lanes right now?
No. I can say no. We are listening to comments, right? And so I'm not saying like everything is draft and we want to hear from everyone, but there are other bike lanes proposed. A really good question. Everyone listen up. If you haven't seen it already, there are other bike lanes proposed as part of Sbtap. A lot of the focus has been on Broadway. I've heard quite a few positive comments on these other roads, right? First Street is one of them. Farragut Road is another. I Street is another, right? These don't involve removal of parking or anything like that, and so those are not on pause.
Sorry, they don't involve removing parking?
No, no. And part of that is because they're one-ways. It's like I Street always has been, but another thing that allows us when we have one-ways, we have more road dimensions, so we can dedicate some to a bike traveling in one direction, cars traveling in one direction, and not have to remove parking.
But on Farragut, one of the main,
Farragut Road, because it's so wide, we have a slide on that, it's even wider than West Broadway, we could add a bike lane, shrink the travel, and still not lose a single parking.
Why are you shrinking travel? Like, I don't get it.
So that goes back to the question, and I'm still gonna try to ask people.
I'm gonna talk. Listen, I'm gonna talk.
You're asking, all right, good, you can ask your question.
Yeah, no, I'm
But
gonna
a lot
tell
of
you,
people
I'm
have been
gonna
raising
tell
their
you.
hands and asking, waiting
Listen,
patiently
on
to
East
say.
Broadway and Broadway, all the way down to Broadway Station,
Yep.
during a normal day at 10, right? Right? 10 a.m., there are more trucks, right? So why are you pinching off the road? We're gonna have a single travel road, one way to the other. It's hard enough right now,
You're talking about
as it
Broadway?
is, as it is.
Or we're talking about Farragut?
So now, no, we're talking about Broadway.
Okay.
So why and who is coming up with this? This is insane. Why do bikers who pay nothing, and you know my fucking, what do you call it? The fucking, no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to swear. My excise tax. The roads are a mess. The roads are a mess. Fix the road. Fix the MBTA before you come at me and tell me like, oh, we're gonna have a bus lane. The bus lane is a shit show because there's potholes everywhere. This is a mess. Don't sell me something.
All right, calm down, please. All right, come on, calm down. All right.
I've been thinking about this for months.
Fair enough, but
And
trying to
you shoved Summer Street down my throat. And I told you last year, I was here, does anyone remember me? I told you last year you were gonna shove Broadway down my throat. And you did.
No,
Now you're here. Tell you what. Now, in the dark of night.
All right,
You,
all right,
yeah, you.
all right, close. On Broadway.
Fuck you damn well. You know damn well. You want to unarmed and you want them over.
On Broadway, we have moved the bike lanes as part of this plan. Okay?
Larry.
Thanks. All right, next question. Yes, sir.
Sean Sullivan,
Yes, Chief, yes, please.
Right. There's topics here that people have strong feelings about. Everyone is entitled to have those strong feelings. But if we want to have an environment where people feel like they can come and be heard and have their opinion respected, there's a level of decorum that I think everybody in this room would benefit to try to maintain. That means not swearing at people. That means not screaming. We can disagree strongly, but we need to have a level of respect for everybody in this conversation.
Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
Sean Sullivan, South Boston resident. I think that the outreach was great. I got the comments. I've been to a bunch of the meetings before. I know the comment period is still open, so people can still comment. So did it today again for more things I was thinking about. I read the plan, probably one of 3 people in here that read it that are a city employee, because it's 190 pages long.
In full.
I think that there's a lot of good things in the plan. I support the plan. I also think that we need a lot of these things now, and that delaying the plan is going to cause a lot more incidents to happen. A lot of the things that improve pedestrian safety, like crosswalks, need to happen. I know that Ed Flynn opposes the plan. I don't know what in the plan you oppose, because you are for daylighting, but the plan has daylighting, so I just don't know the specific things. And my question is anything possibly going to be done before the plan is implemented to improve safety for pedestrians, like crossing at Broadway? Because right now, it's 40 feet to cross Broadway Street at almost every point, and it's unsafe to pass when it's dark in the winter, and it's 4 o'clock, and you're getting home from work, and you walk home from work, you cannot cross safely, so we're gonna go through another winter next year, where someone's gonna get hit by a car on Broadway, so is there any chance for any of it to happen? So with the plan?
Hey, Matt, let me just jump in quick.
I asked a question with the BTD.
No, but I'm the city council, I'm gonna answer it. Excuse me?
You're gonna answer?
Yeah, I'm gonna answer the
Go ahead,
question.
Councilor.
What I'd like to see is more speed humps and more raised crosswalks. I think that's the critical part as we continue to discuss this issue. Not only that is the enforcement piece of speeding and traffic regulations. That's what I'm advocating for. I think that's what residents said to me clearly. That's what they're advocating for, and I think I speak for the residents, so I have the right to come up here and answer the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
Yes, that's
I'm
right.
also going to ask Chief Michael Hodge, the question was early implementation action items perhaps along West Broadway or Broadway in particular.
What's that?
Understanding
Yeah, I know
that the plan, may not be
Who does?
approved immediately. Gotcha.
BPDA?
Yeah, so I think, part of what we're trying to do with East and West Broadway is get to some level of direction, because there's many ways that we can take to slow down traffic on East and West Broadway. There's been different ideas proposed in this plan. Part of why we're here, why we're listening, why this plan is published, why we went through this process is to try to identify what strategies, short-term and long-term, we can implement that will help improve the safety situation on Broadway. What we can't do, Councilor, is put speed humps or raised crosswalks on Broadway. And the reason we cannot do that is because our fire department and our emergency medical services have said very clearly to the transportation department for many years that on major streets, they do not want to see these because they are concerned about it slowing response times and making it difficult to transport patients. I would love to put raised crosswalks across Broadway, but I will tell you that we will be told no by the emergency responders that all of us rely on. So instead, what we look at is other strategies like narrowing the lanes, ways to better identify crosswalks to improve visibility of pedestrians. We recently replaced all of the lighting on West Broadway with newer, brighter lighting. All of these things are strategies that can help improve pedestrian safety without building raised crosswalks or speed humps in places that our fire department has said they cannot go.
Oh, the Farragut Road. Yeah.
Why do some pedestrian crossings walks have a blinking light in front of them? Like Farragut Road, I live at Broadway and Farragut. Ed Flynn, after the girl got hit, I fought for years with everybody that he wasn't on there for a long time. He did it because someone got hit. I sit on my porch and people still fly through. They don't have blinking flashing signs there. They go through. And actually, this median, whatever that is black, and so many cars go over it because they don't see it. So many of these crosswalks, I see some that blink and some don't. That would help. But one other thing with pedestrians that I encounter a lot, and I know a lot of my friends do, and you can't do anything about that, they don't look when they're crossing. They're on their noses. They walk up. I don't think they're taught like I taught my kids when I'm trying to teach my grandkids. Look both ways. But they just come out of nowhere.
Responsibility goes both ways. Everyone has to look, but Matt, does anyone want to talk about? Oh, well, the Farragut Road is just, so we don't have to take away anything. You're right. Thank you for reminding me.
That was my big concern.
We don't have to take away, we get a parking, travel lane, bike lane, etc., and we don't lose a thing, because those are, honestly, those are the widest streets in South Boston. The widest street in South Boston.
Back and tell the mayor, we don't need
So, Thank you. Pat, or Yash, very quickly, the criteria we use on how we determine blinking crosswalks?
So the blinking crosswalks, we've actually added, as you probably know, quite a few in South Boston recently. These are the diamond-shaped yellow warning signs that just tell drivers that a crosswalk is coming, and we've added a solar-powered flashing lights around some of them. You know, as I think was alluded to earlier by Pat in the slides, the effectiveness of this is limited. It's something that we've gotten a lot of requests for. We try to space them out because when every crosswalk has a blinking sign on it, people just tune it out. So we've tried to space them out. We've put enough that there's sort of a little bit, hopefully a little bit more awareness from drivers about the crosswalks and the need to look. We don't think it would be effective to put them on every single crosswalk. So we mostly tried to follow resident feedback about where the concerns about building are.
Street, right? 300 block of Summer Street, you got a blinker light there.
This is the button you press.
We're asking the street to tell us why don't we have on Sullivan Hill, on East Broadway, Farragut Road, why don't you have that blinking sign? People do stop on the crosswalk and let the people go. I see it every day.
I mean, there's a church and a school on East Broadway, they should be.
Right, well, one thing I'll also say, the chief talked about some of the various criteria. Another one is, 311, let us know, call the councilors and say we'd like to see one here. And so that's another way to let your voice know.
311 is like talking to a wall.
Thank you, Chico. Yep.
That's true.
I was going to ask about those blinking lights because the blinking light or something needs to be done here. And I've seen cars zoom around the rotary and zoom around the stop signs.
This is Preble Circle.
Have no responsibility whatsoever when there's people crossing and you stop here and this car zooms beside you.
Yep.
And then there's nowhere for those people to go. That's a very large section to cross.
Yep.
Nothing is done here. I mean, they put these circles around the rotary that people don't pay attention to.
I hope everyone hears that, right? Because we hear complaints on both sides. Preble Circle, there's been some changes there recently, right? There's new lane markings when you're coming from the south, coming north. You have to get in that one lane. And that is designed, right, for exactly what you're talking about, in order so that pedestrians can get through there easily. It comes with trade-offs. I live in South Dorchester now. I was gentrified out of Southeast many years ago. So I take that route a long time, and yes, it adds to some traffic, but those are the sacrifices I have to make because of what you're saying. Yeah. That is something we can look at. There's been those changes that were done over the past several months, right? And then we're hearing more. I believe the council recently sent a request to basically what you're asking as well. We'll continue to look at improvements, working with the state on trying to make improvements there. Yes, sir, in the back. You've had your hand up for a while.
What we'd like to know, is there any validity to the way we're going around that the city of Boston is spending more money on bicycle lanes than they are on such things as bridge repairs?
So I doubt that's the case only because of the cost associated, but the question's a legitimate one. Is the city spending more money on bike lanes, et cetera, than other transportation infrastructure like bridge repair? I doubt you know that off the top of your head, but can you ballpark, bike infrastructure costs?
Yes, so our capital budget is about $1.2 billion over the 4 years. About 2% of that is specific to bike infrastructure.
And yet you don't have a screen for your slides. You have $1.2 billion, but you don't have a screen for the slides.
What a microphone!
Yes, Jim in the back. Good to see you, Jim.
Isn't this all about federal money? Isn't this going to be pushed down our throat because you've taken the federal money? And also, how is opening your car door in traffic making any street safer?
Right.
Explain that to me.
I don't know what federal money you're talking about.
For bike lanes. You've never taken federal money?
I don't think we have any federal money for bike lanes.
I would like to look into that. I've been told this is why this is all being pushed. Because this doesn't make sense. In South Boston, this makes absolutely no sense. All you do is add condo units, and now you're talking about taking away streets, and you say that's going to make it safer?
Well, what we can do on the federal funding is we're taking notes, right? There are ARPA dollars. I understand the vast majority that goes to the floor affordable housing, but to your question, like, the city of Boston, $100 federal funding, where has it gone? We don't have that off the top of our head, but we can get it to you. We can find out if any of it's gone to bike infrastructure. Jim?
First off, the pint you guys were offering, I think there's plenty of people in this room who would have took that pint, but we didn't know about it.
You didn't know about
In all due respect, Commissioner, I don't know if that's your title, but would you say level of respect and decorum in the room? It probably would have been wise to do this meeting first before you put all these plans together. That would have been the best way to evolve this situation. That would be more respectful. Thank you, Councilman Flynn, for actually stopping it and having this meeting, because if not, you'd probably be digging up the Broadways right now. And everything you're saying is safety, safety, safety. There's a way to put safety in place with everyone's talking speed bumps, lights, etc., without reducing the lanes. They're going to hurt the businesses. It's going to slow down traffic. As far as the speed bumps, the first responders, we can run it by them, but I got to think that they're going to say, I'll take a speed bump over one lane now at each way Broadway, because that's going to slow them down more. 1956, U.S. Interstate Highway Eisenhower Act was for highways. It was three things: national defense, economic growth, and mobility. I don't think we need national defense going down Broadway, but economic growth is going to hurt, mobility is going to hurt. This is common sense. It does not make sense. How many businesses in South Boston have people from outside of South Boston that's their client base? You're going to lose that 20%, 25% that you have. It's going to hurt. And it just doesn't make sense. Summer Street, slam that down our throat. This morning, I can show you my phone, I sat at Elm Broadway. The point is, you want to put 50, 60 people on a bus to eliminate cars? Sat there. 8:45 a.m. What happened? Number 7 bus, 4 people? No, 8 people on the bus, 8 got on the bus, 16 people. Meanwhile, between 7 and the next 7 bus, 87 cars went through. Most have 1 person in it. Let's say it's 1.5. That's over 100 people to get the 16 on the bus. It's not working. It's not a plan. The 7 bus is too infrequent, not enough people on it. People have to drive in South Boston. We've been asking for data. 2,000 people, Summer Street, number 7 bus in, 2,000 out. I don't even know if it's that high anymore or remote, but that's the numbers you gave. But how many people in South Boston, you said you have the data, that actually have to drive to work? Some people have to drive to Mass General, they have to drive to Woburn, they have to drive to Braintree. Why are we inconveniencing people with cars?
Well, I'll say, some of the data we have for this talks about that, specifically on the bike lane and bus lane. I'll defer if anyone wants to talk about more detail, but that's a separate process. And that meeting, there's a meeting on the, we'll answer it. I'm not trying to avoid it. I just want to make sure if you're hyper involved, make sure to come here in this exact spot on Monday, July 8th. Matt Moran, who's running that, will be talking about that. We'll have much more data to share. But yes,
I just wanted to mention one issue during the budget debate. I specifically asked the fire commissioner, what about speed humps on larger streets? And he said he's comfortable with them now because the speed humps that we have now are smaller and they're not as high as the old traditional ones. So he did say that, Commissioner. We could look at the video. He is comfortable if we have speed humps on large streets.
We look forward to installing.
What is that?
I said we look forward to installing them with the blessing of our public safety.
As somebody who travels daily using the Mass Pike, Broadway, and Farragut, I see very, very limited number of buses or bikes in comparison to cars. Therefore, we are going to be inconveniencing our streets for our everyday citizens that are using cars for the extreme limited number of buses and bikes. In this one last week, traveling to and from all areas, I've seen 3 bikes, 1 bus, and I can't count how many cars. So I asked you earlier, where is the data to support how many bike people we have, say, in a week that are traveling down those lanes, or how many buses? Because the data isn't there to us that are driving. None of us are seeing that. Hold on. I agree with everything this gentleman has said. And I'm sorry, I don't know your name. But also, why are we making all this road construction, spending all of this tax dollar money when we haven't implemented other things that have to work, such as the one-way streets that did work in the snowstorm? We all know it worked. Was it an inconvenience? Yes, because none of us were used to which streets were transversing. But in the end, it was very convenient. The speed humps, the lighted streets, all of that infrastructure, which is nominal cost in comparison to this road construction, you're gonna increase the potential injury of opening up, decreasing street length, opening your cars, getting out, getting hit. There's been many people with bicycles getting hit by the cars, the doors opening. One bike, when I was down on the Mass Pike, red light for the little bus buddy on the light, went right through it as I'm taking a right to go into Marine Park. They don't watch anything what they're doing, and we're being inconvenienced. And I'm sick of everyone, other than our few elected officials, supporting us. But everyone else is not standing by what we want. This is outstanding.
We had our Zoom meeting back in April, whenever it was, that was a point, show us the data. So we did all the raw data from the bike counts and all that, and folks can disagree, but we posted them. It's right out there. The other thing that we're doing more and more of with camera technology is using video to count these things. I'm pretty sure the bus lane did that, and just like looking at violators, because we acknowledge that enforcement isn't what it's cracked up to be. And so there may be new technology ways of AI, et cetera, being able to really count that, because I get it. When we do a count, and if we say it's X and it's higher than you think it is, we end up just talking past each other. I think we need to be able to show it. What we did is we put the data online, and that's, I think, the best we can do. Yes, just a reminder, there's a hard stop here at 8. I'm going to try to just get as many comments. Obviously, we'll answer questions, but if we have to do comments, and we'll come around as much as we can.
How much input is it on the EMS end? But that presentation, there's no mention on any sort of input that they have.
Police, fire, EMS input on the plan. Okay, and I'll defer to others. We don't do anything. And please, my colleagues jump in. We don't do anything when it comes to road networks, et cetera, without the sign off of public safety individuals. It just doesn't happen necessarily in this stage. Is that fair enough to say? Right? Is that?
Why, if you're narrowing the street by 14, 17 feet, why wouldn't you include that early in the process?
Well, again, we have an understanding.
And a fire truck is coming down Broadway, what are they supposed to do with the
We work with our public safety professionals all the time, so we do. We have these measurements, this minimum turning radius. Again, I'm out of my element, so I don't jump in, but we have those things, and before we make any changes, it's like a condo development. People ask us that, well, why isn't the fire department? They will check the old plans, and if they say no, it doesn't happen.
Why don't you, did you talk to them before then?
I have not personally, no. I just explained it, so
why don't you get...
We talk, no, we do. All right, I'll answer this, right? Maybe this is a better way to answer your question. I'll jump in. The planning council, right, involves representatives from all departments throughout the city that have any built infrastructure, right? That includes the police department, the fire department, EMS, Boston Public Schools, the library. And that is the forum where those larger discussions happen around, to be fair, is it getting down to the nitty-gritty around this level of detail? But no, on the higher level, it's folks like Arthur making sure that the fire commissioner is aware that we're doing road planning in South Boston and the Fenway and other areas, and that, we'll obviously need to coordinate. So I understand what you're saying, and we talked to them yet, and we can look at that in a vacuum and say, well, why not? But I think what I'm saying to you is we have those checks and balances. We're doing, and not only that, we know the basic criteria needed, but we're not just guessing. We understand what a fire truck needs because Pat's been doing this for 30 years, that sort of stuff.
No, but if you're narrowing the street by 14 feet, wouldn't you find out from the police, fire, and ambulance that early on in the process, so you don't even propose that sort of thing?
I take your point and I commit to going, I'll even personally talk to some of the firefighters.
Based on what chiefs have told me from Summer Street, they weren't even involved. In fact, the chief actually said during the meeting that he would not have.
Well, let's speak for ourselves, right? If that chief wants to come and speak for himself, we'll hear him out.
Well, speak.
Yep.
I just want to speak a little bit to something that Mark said, which is that a lot of the work that we do around street design is built around standards. Some of these are federal design, engineering design standards, state standards, city standards. Those standards are developed with our public safety agencies in mind. So for example, we have a rule in Boston that says you need to keep 20 feet clear on any road so that fire trucks that have outriggers have space to put them out. So our engineers don't go and talk to the fire department every time they design a road because they know what the rule is. Till recently, the rule has been no speed humps on major arterials. We don't have that conversation on every project because they've told us this is what we need you to do. So a lot of the work that happens with any kind of concept design that you might see for a street is engineers with a long list of rules from various places, including our public safety agencies, putting that all together and saying, this is a street we could design that meets everyone's needs and improves safety or achieves whatever other goal we're trying to do. That's often how that consultation works. It's through the standards we establish.
So you surveyed the bike lines before you surveyed at least by the EMS?
No, I don't think that's an accurate statement.
Thank you very much.
My name is Ted, South Boston resident, live here, own a house here. I'm a biker. I have one goal as well, and that's to get home to my house. I'm a biker too, by the way. I want to get home alive. I would like to get home quicker, but my number one goal is to get home alive. I can't drive to work because it costs me $40 a day to park there. So I have two options, the bus or the bike. So I just want to respectfully add my voice to the people who approve and support what you're doing to try to make it safer for people like me who can't drive to work and have to have alternative means that are safer. That's all I want to say.
Thank you. Hey. Hold on, Phyllis. Why don't we just, please, everyone has the ability to say what they want and make your comments to us. We are making the proposals. Everyone else giving their opinion. Yes.
Page 12, it says that none of the 9 corridors are funded present.
Yes, none of the 9 corridors are funded present. Correct.
So, what the council said, thank you, council, for having an in-person meeting. Those Zoom things are ridiculous. Nobody can get on them. It's a select group, that's not, but thank you. The transportation department, if they were able to get this passed today, this would be the end of our discussions at all. Once it's approved, that is the end of the process. And all they were waiting for would be funding. So we have to have a jaundiced eye to the transportation department. I don't know if they are very transparent. I don't think so. I think they're kind of disrespectful to the community, some of the members of the community that are here today. And I don't think they can really be trusted to do the best for this community. And have they done an environmental impact study?
Thank you for the comment in the beginning. I don't know. An environmental impact study is part of the transportation. Yeah, it's just not part of this planning. So we do environmental planning as well, but it's just not part of this transportation plan. Good question. I'll have to follow up with my planning colleagues offline. It's not going to be part of this transportation plan. Environmental planning is a bit of a different animal that I feel like I'm a little bit outside of my league, but I'll follow up.
Yeah, with the buses and trucks.
Yeah.
And automobiles, that's the solution.
Oh, fair enough. I understand the point, yep, and it's a fair one.
Solution with the bicycles as well.
Yep.
The oil coming off the chain and the decomposition of the tires. Just goes into the gut.
Fair enough. Well, I want to get someone who hasn't spoken.
I just want to respond to the gentleman just about what's in the plan is conceptual. The next stage is design. So when we have a design project for a corridor, you have a whole other series of engagements with the immediate abutters, the stakeholders, the community. So there would be additional opportunity to weigh in, something you like, something you don't like, during the design process. So there's concept plans.
Thank you.
And then there's design and then construction. That's kind of how it goes through until you have something built. So you would have another opportunity.
Exactly, good point. So the point around it not being funded, when that funding comes, that hard or wide plan would involve further. So thank you, really good point. The gentleman behind you, just because you've already asked, and if we come around, but I want to make sure anyone who hasn't had the chance.
I live on Columbia. Closest cross street is East 8. I'm all for pedestrian safety, but for some reason, the proposed short-term and long-term plans, with that date lighting, they eliminate 6 on-street parking spaces. So I'm going to go home today and I'm going to have a hard time finding parking. They eliminate those spots, it's going to be impossible in the summer to park anywhere.
Ed, I'm sorry, what particular intersection?
East 8th and Columbia.
Okay. I have to take a closer look at, I mean, I will admit, there are areas of the plan where we
It was
do-
like a crosswalk at the intersection all the way to the bus stop.
No, I'm trying to picture my mind.
Next to the
Exactly, so it's to the point that was made earlier about teeing off intersections. We want to hear comments again, everything's draft, including intersection treatments. But what you're saying is we've taken a lot of intersections that have odd angles, long crosswalks, and what we've done is, is teed them off, as the gentleman mentioned, what that just means is make a 90-degree turn. Therefore, we can shrink the size of the crosswalk. One of the biggest difficulties we have is when we have crosswalks at 120 feet long, and I'm not exaggerating, those are the size of the biggest ones in the neighborhood we found. So I'll have to take a closer look and want to hear comments, but in instances, put it this way, I can say without a doubt, every time we had to make it or recommend treatments to an intersection to make it safe for pedestrians, we prioritized on-street parking, and so if we had to, it was, it was because it was the only way we could make it safe.
Do you know for sure if they did a turn radius study that shows that 2 of the 11 buses can pass each other while making that 90-degree turn?
Yes, I can assure you that in any case where it's all along the bus route, we had that conversation with the team. The other thing I can assure you in instances like close to the Perry School and what's the school in the middle of Holland? Why can't I remember? The Perkins, my goodness. Because we're making intersection recommendation changes by the T&E Center, by the Perry, so we talked to BPS Transportation to make sure not only could their buses get in and out, but how would we be affecting their current layover and parking plan that they do, because as we know, a lot of buses just pull up alongside and park anywhere. So yes, we talked to the team, we measured out on bus routes specifically to make sure. But I'm happy that you can email us, like those, I've had that level of detailed conversation with people. I live on this intersection, and you're recommending a change to in front of my house. We want to talk to you directly. We'll come out sometime over the summer, either just talk it over, I'm happy to come out. We've got the entire summer comment period. If it's right in front of your house and you have questions, I'll come out and talk it over with you. I may not tell you exactly what you want to hear, but we'll come and we'll look and we'll take it seriously. Yes, I think.
Actually, I have someone who wants to speak.
You're deferring, giving your time.
I think I'm going to let you leave without talking. So I'm just trying to get out of here because, first, thanks to Councilor Flynn for spearheading these issues for the community. Really appreciate that. And thanks to Arthur for showing up personally to listen to the concerns of the room. I'm also one of the people that actually read the full report because I'm concerned that this as it affects the community. There are 2 things in terms of context that I think are missing here. And I would ask you to, when you revisit the report and incorporate this feedback, you look at it from these 2 perspectives. The first and most important thing is first responders and their burden in public safety. And the second is improving the mass transit system. Any world-class city has to have a world-class mass transit system, and we don't. And when I read this report, it equated things like the depth of bus shelters and how much sidewalk space would be taken up by a bike docking station, as opposed to the most critical points, which should be the 2 that I just mentioned. The other thing I didn't see in this report, and I would like to hear if it's been analyzed, and if not, it could be incorporated, is the impact on development. There was only a passing reference to the Redgate project, the Summer Street project. There was no mention of anything that's going on in the Dorchester Street corridor with National or HYM or Lincoln Properties. There was no mention of anything that's going on in the Pappas Industrial Yard at all. So I want to know how you factored in the future transportation needs of the city, not just look back and and what's happened here in the last 5 years.
Thank you very much, and I can answer that. So the .ab area, the HYM, the National Core, and all that, large development that was much of it was already approved. We did that planning, that transportation planning was approved in 2019. The same individuals that worked on it, I worked on it, Sam Roy worked on it, and so while it didn't come out in this report, there's a separate report called South Boston Plan.ab, South Boston Transportation, that is just as voluminous, that speaks to that. So that's, and on the Pappas area, while we didn't, well, that's part of the Seaport transit plan, that was again focused on, to your point, more just the transit, so buses, ferries, things of that, trains, etc. And so we did that planning already, and so it fed into here. It's just it's not part of this report. We actually separated the three sections, if you will, of Southie on a transportation front purposely, because honestly, all of it was too much. Quite frankly, even the way we bifurcated and freeze was probably too much, and so that's why we did it that way. Some of that work has already been done.
I don't think that, I'm sorry, I don't think that makes sense though, because they're not distinct issues. This is a very small geographic area. In Dorchester corridor, Dorchester Avenue corridor feeds into South Boston. The Summer Street corridor feeds into the Seaport. They're all interconnected. We treat them as distinct planning functions as a state.
Well, all right, fair enough, but it's not, that's not what we did either, right? I guess we'd have to talk quite a bit for us to go through how they're intertwined, how one recommendation, I'll give you an example. One of the recommendations in this, at the risk of getting booed here, but one of the recommendations in the Seaport Transit Plan was the bus lane, right? And so like they're all connected, there is, trust me, they're connected, but we don't have the time to go over exactly how. It wasn't as bifurcated as you're thinking, but fair enough. If it were, that would be a mistake.
More of a Venn diagram.
Exactly. Luann, I'm sorry, I know you've had your hand up for a while. And again, we do have a hard stop. The building has a hard stop at 8 o'clock. They're going to have to lock up, so we are going to have to wrap this up soon.
I'm actually going to turn my back on you for a minute because my question is to you. So why are these plans together? Some of you guys said it's not logical, and you're not actually seeing what the residents are seeing. So I'm going to give you West Broadway as an example, from Effin Broadway all the way up to Perkins Square, right? You're familiar with that, right off of G Street. So you've got Lincoln, Capitol, CVS. Let's just take those three businesses. Parking on both sides of the street, one lane up, one lane back. So here's a scenario, a very realistic scenario, but I'm not hearing it being addressed. When you're coming up Broadway, now I'm behind these three trucks. I can't go anywhere. So I have two choices. One is I wait for all of those trucks to unload. That could be hours, right? Or I'm going to have to try to go over the double yellow line. Now I can't see past these, they're not box trucks, they're like 18 wheelers. So I can't see past them. But I'm either gonna wait for 3 hours or try to go around them. If I go around them, I'm potentially creating a head-on collision because the cars are coming down the other way. So not just for cars, but for first responders, fire, safety, ambulance. How is that being addressed? It's not. So you're just thinking, okay, we're going to reduce Broadway to one lane. We're going to reduce East Broadway to one lane. But you're not leaving any room for delivery trucks. And that also goes into the dedicated bus lane and those bike lanes for our small businesses. Now, let's take Portobello up on East Broadway. You know Portobello, right? People think that South Bostonians are lazy, and we just double park because we think it's privilege. That's not the reality of it. There's never parking. If there's a parking spot outside of these businesses, of course you're going to take it. Why wouldn't you? But in the meantime, if there's not, I'm going to go to Portobello and pick up my food. I'm going to double park. Or I'm not going to go to Portobello. The same way goes for Olga's down on West Broadway. Best banana bread ever. Okay, but if I can't double park, I'm not going to go there. So as you know, West Roxbury is reporting 30% revenue down for their businesses. So how are we doing economic development and city growth when we're hurting our small businesses? So I also want to end with as you know, there is very little trust with the BPDA because of prior administrations and prior directors, okay? And basically lying to the community. I'll just address South Boston, it's citywide, but I'll just address South Boston. And if you want us to trust you, you have to hear us. Because right now, I'm thinking this is all a Trojan horse. You're taking out the bike lanes and you're basically saying, okay, community, we hear you. When in actuality, you're putting in other things that are hurting us. So every time there's a problem in South Boston, the solution always hurts the residents who live here. And that's not okay. I need you to hear that. And I need you to address some of the safety issues that your bus lanes, bike lanes, are affecting us, and how. It's a Trojan horse, I'm sorry.
So I guess, thanks for talking to us directly. Listen, this is your night tonight. I'm in a listening mode tonight. I appreciate your comments. I do think...
I appreciate you being here. We've never met before.
So I guess I'm hearing you say you made changes to the plan to address safety, but we're worried that you're going to do something else. Again, I can't... Trust gets built over time by evidence and proof, not by me saying something. So I appreciate your skepticism, but we did hear and absorb that safety was really paramount. So I think what we really tried to do was say, well, you made a whole list of recommendations, some of which you like, some of which you don't. I think we need to prioritize and try to implement the safety ones first, and then have it later talk about the other ones, because people have questions and concerns about them. I'll stop there because it's your night for us to listen.
I just want you to have buy-in. I want you to have community buy-in. We live here. We're multi-generational. We're new residents. We're old residents. We are a community. We have schools, churches. We're a community. And you need to listen to us because we know better. Believe it or not. So Sam Roy, love her. She's okay. However, she's not living here, experiencing what we experience, and it's common sense. So if I cause a head-on collision, do I sue the city? Or is the city going to say, you should have waited 3 hours to have those trucks somewhere? That's what I mean.
Luann, I'm sorry, we're going to have to, because we only got literally a minute or two. I always tell you, always wait to the end to raise your hand. I tell you to raise your hand earlier in the night. Yes, and it's like closing comments, because like I said, Janet is going to kick us out.
So
we'll have more engagement.
I think that this is just like a Band-Aid for like bigger issues. Because in theory, all of this would be lovely, right? But Southie is a cut-through city, and so how are we going to keep these people on the highways so that they're not speeding up L Street? And also, and also all like the double parking and whatnot that she spoke about. But like the bigger problem is the roads suck, the T sucks, and we're a cut-through city, so everyone just speeds up L Street like it's nothing, or speeds down Old Colony. So it's like, how do we stop that? And then maybe we can implement some of this stuff, because then we won't have so many cars.
Addressing cut-through. I will say, some of the things that we saw,
and the overdevelopment,
et cetera, are designed to make it less convenient to use it as a cut-through. It was a very good comment. Yes, sir. And then Eileen, we're going to have to wrap up.